their frontline manager, human resources, and the fleet services department. In the event that an authorized driver is involved in an accident involving a fatality, injury, or towaway, the driver will be suspended with pay until completion by Aramark of an investigation of such accident. These drivers will continue to receive pay as a driver and may be tasked with other duties during the investigation. CMV drivers that have been removed from their driving activities due to an accident investigation will only be allowed to return to their driving duties when the frontline manager, human resources, and the fleet services department determine they are safe to resume their duties as a CMV driver for Aramark. An Aramark Fleet Accident Investigation Report must be completed by the Aramark manager or supervisor for all accidents involving a fatality or bodily injury requiring medical treatment away from the scene, or when a vehicle must be towed from the scene of an accident. Authorized drivers of hazardous materials. All authorized drivers of hazardous materials are required to comply with all federal, state, and local laws and regulations. In accordance with regulations promulgated as part of the U.S. Patriot Act, all authorized drivers of hazardous materials who apply for the new hazardous material endorsements will be fingerprinted by the U.S. government. The results of the fingerprints will be submitted by the government to the FBI, who will run them against its criminal database. This requirement extends to all authorized drivers who renew existing hazardous material endorsements. Driver discipline. Driver discipline in the event that a driver is involved in a moving violation or in an accident which is determined to be at fault while operating an Aramark vehicle, the driver may be subject to the following disciplinary action. First violation in a 12-month period, verbal reprimand. Second violation in a 12-month period, written reprimand and mandatory attendance at a defensive driving course on his own time at his own expense. Third violation in a 12-month period, employment may be terminated. Next slide. If the same incident is both a preventable accident and a moving violation, it shall be treated as one offense. Disciplinary action. Aramark will not tolerate violations of this policy. Violations of this policy may subject the driver to disciplinary action up to and including termination. All violations of this policy will be referred to and reviewed by the Human Resources Department, which will determine appropriate disciplinary action up to and including termination. Mandatory immediate review required. Notice of a violation of any of the following offenses will render the authorized driver ineligible to drive an Aramark motor vehicle. Approval of Human Resources, the Fleet Services Department, and Risk Management is required before the authorized driver is permitted to drive an Aramark motor vehicle. Suspension of driving privileges, driving while under suspension, driving under the influence, fleeing, eluding police, leaving the scene of a motor vehicle collision, felony only, reckless driving or careless driving charged as felony only, homicide by vehicle or vehicular manslaughter, speeding violation of 30 or more miles per hour over the speed limit. Receipt form. All authorized drivers are required to complete the attached receipt form. Failure to do so will result in the immediate suspension of the authorized driver's driving privileges and may result in disciplinary action up to and including termination. Compliance. Authorized drivers who fail to comply with this policy will not be permitted to drive an Aramark CMV and will be disciplined up to and including termination. No Aramark manager, supervisor, or other employee may authorize anyone, including but not limited to employees, client employees, vendors, or subcontractors, to operate a CMV on behalf of Aramark, its clients, or vendors, except in accordance with this policy. Managers or supervisors who fail to comply with this policy will be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination. Next slide. use of third-party vendor and modifications and supplements. Aramark, through its Fleet Services Department, reserves the right to implement this policy and the applicable procedures, including but not limited to the coordination of physical examinations, MVRs, and the maintenance of required DQFs through the use of a third-party vendor of its choice. Aramark, through its Fleet Services Department, reserves the right to modify and supplement this policy and the procedures set forth herein at any time and from time to time. Records retention. All records created under this policy, including driver qualification files, driver vehicle inspection reports, driver logbooks, driver timesheets, vehicle maintenance records, acknowledgement forms, and other documents shall be retained in accordance with applicable laws and regulations and the Aramark Records Management Policy. Applicability. This policy applies to all CMVs and drivers of CMVs within the North America food, hospitality, and facility services within the United States. This concludes the Aramark Commercial Motor Vehicle Safety Training. Thank you.